it's great to have a small group because I'm hoping that we can actually play with a couple tools if you guys are up to it. So if you are on a device, Liz, I know you are because I see you there. If you're on a device, that would be great. And if not, we'll make John run back and forth. But it'd be great if you are on something, a computer or whatever. So the slide deck link is in the chat. And I'm going to share my screen if I can remember. So John, you're in charge of any stuff that happens in the chat right now, okay?
Sure.
Okay.
John, get this through the link.
I can't see it when I'm.
Just mute the microphone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Otherwise, reach it.
So I'm thinking.
Yeah.
John.
So you have the short URL for it in the chat window, but this is the slide deck that we are using. And if you can follow the bouncing ball at this hour, congratulations. Do you know, that's a generational thing. People do not know what that means. You understand that, right? Do you know what that means?
Yeah.
The sing-along, the bouncing ball.
Right.
This is Mitch Miller, way back. Double just like another lovely bonus. Thank you.
Yeah. Here I go again with my, I've never had this trouble. I'm wondering what my husband is doing on our bandwidth downstairs. It's causing some challenges. He causes iPad Emily, and sometimes Emily uses an awful lot of bandwidth. I'm not quite sure what they're doing down there. So maybe I won't stream this right now. Okay, let me stop sharing for a second, see if that helps. I'll try again. I found a whole window open full of tabs last time, John. It was part of the problem. I had some things open, but I don't know. Let's do that. All right, so here's a question. If you are in the Zoom window, we have a built-in, just like in Collaborate, we have built-in chat. So here's the question to go into the built-in chat. Have you used a back channel of any shape or size or form ever? And if so, in what context? If you wouldn't mind typing into the chat, that would be great. Here I am. Nope. Liz says nope. And you can also type, what is a back channel? Why are you asking me this at the beginning? If you want to. Right. So Twitter or with Google Slides, because we now have that wonderful option, as John's pointing out, to go into the Q&A mode. Isn't that the question? What's it called, Q&A in Google Slides? Okay. Anybody else? So it is great that I couldn't, it was great that I couldn't be in my window, my presentation window, because I can see what's going on in the chat. And this points out something that I will make this point several times, is it is so helpful to have a helping hand in the chat in any kind of back channel that you're running while you're presenting, even if you're an experienced presenter. And I think, John, you would agree with that, right?
Oh, yes.
They can screen things, they can respond to questions if they are able, and they can save questions so that, because sometimes the chat gets really busy in whatever venue you're in. So having a helping hand, and it can be a student. if you wish. I sometimes take the busiest student who tends to be distracted or doing lots of side texting, whatever, and give them that job. You are now my helping hand. I give them jobs like timekeeper and I ask for volunteers, and people get jealous when I assign other people to that job. So it's like I hype the job. So in the back, if you're going to run a back channel, there are two core strategies that help an awful lot. One is have a helper, and if you're going to do it synchronously. The other strategy is to stop periodically and take a back channel break. Literally say, let me take a breath, let me see what's happening in the back channel, and I want to be able to address the things. So build that into your time frame and into your teaching mode. If you're doing this with a repeat group often, they will get used to it and be helpful in that process, potentially. So let me try sharing my screen again, see what happens. And so thank you for participating in that. So our goals today are to look at some basics and then take a look at some examples while we play with some tools. So that's the deal. So we just did what I proposed here. We started to use the Zoom back channel. Feel free to continue to use it, and or if you're on Twitter, feel free. Did I get this right, John?
It would be a hashtag, not an
Oh, right.
Yeah, duh.
Oh, she knows.
I know. Okay.
But yes,
And then-
yours is right.
Okay. And then there is a resources doc that was actually built by Catherine Poole and I to do a version of this for Fact 2 previously. So we have a separate document for that. So we already did this. And I think one of the things that I want to point out is I do use, for those of you who've been in other sessions, I use slides sometimes. I use them for pacing for myself. Also, sometimes for just the imagery. When you are using the back channel for specific purposes, this is where your slides really do come in handy. Not only do you get a reminder of what you are prompting people to put into the back channel if it's not open-ended, but your users are as well. So that was the question that I thought I was going to be projecting while I asked you to do that last conversation. So this is where I would always use some kind of a prompt, visual as well as audio, and sometimes even more exaggerated. So because we are asking people to have to focus and maybe more, to listen to us, to think about what it is that we're asking them to type, and also to pay attention what's in the main frame. I don't mean mainframe, but in the main focus area. So whatever you can do to help with that multitasking, because we know multitasking really is not all it's cracked up to be. So talk a little bit about back channel nuts and bolts. There are lots of ways to skin the cat. I should have a picture of a really cool kitty cat here, and I do not. Because of the experience that a lot of us have in at conferences, some of us think that back channels only occur during synchronous meetings. They do, but they can also occur to extend, second bullet, beyond the synchronous meeting, or to capture what's going on in parallel groups or parallel activities in a session or in a meeting. It also, fourth bullet, may extend to people who are not in the original meeting. And that's a piece that is a little trickier to use, but can be part of the scheme. Particularly helpful when you're trying to get a more authentic audience kind of embedded with your learners, it's possible to create a Twitter hashtag, for example, and then ask some experts to drop in later on and make comments, even if they can't be part of the synchronous conversation. So why do it anyhow? As I mentioned, one reason that isn't on this list, and it is for the ultimately distractible person. Sometimes it helps keep them engaged, and it can help the more curious and more talented go deeper into your conversations. It is a space for lingering questions. So you're, in many cases, short conference sessions, short class sessions, 50 minutes or whatever, there is often not a chance for everyone to contribute or to ask that question afterwards. So that later reflection or lingering question notion, if we can get our students into participating even on the front and tail end of synchronous sessions, we are extending the learning conversation with them. We're kind of hooking them and tricking them into continuing to play our game. So I do think that if not all the time, not in every situation, because we can really wear this out easily and wear ourselves out, I think that backchannels have a real place. So this is Catherine Pohl's example where she used a back channel because they were examining a huge, do you guys remember when the cups changed from McDonald's and the temperature changed in that coffee cup because of the legal challenge to McDonald's serving coffee that was too hot? So she takes a look at that case in a lecture class of 74 people. Whoops, I didn't mean to do that. So that's one example, and I'm gonna do 3 today's meet examples in a row. So she uses this to help make sure that everybody has a voice. Example 2, using the very same tool, today's meet, which we're going to use in a second. In one of my classes, or in all of my classes, students at the end of the semester participate in a wisdom wall. And this was actually this spring, my Psych Foundations class. And as one of the tail end things that they do 3 things for me during exam week. One is a little exam, one is a wisdom wall, and one is a course survey that is deep and wide. It's not, I won't go into that, but so what I ask students to do is please provide advice for the next cohort of students in this class. And this is perhaps one of my very favorite comments. This class is a journey. You will discover how well you do with time management. With that being said, work in chunks, brain breaks help. And considering this is educational psychology and we do an awful lot of brain-based stuff, I just want to thank this young lady for being a mini me. What I love about this is not any course evaluation. This is not an evaluation of me. It is advice for the future. And these young people actually can be very, very helpful. And of course, very honest. This class can seem overwhelming. Cha-cha-cha. Please do the assignments in order. They sound like me, but it's their voice. So it's so exciting. It's short, it's sweet, and it takes them 2 seconds. But they also feel that they're contributing to their future colleagues, which is really cool. So I'm capturing some thinking that otherwise would go away. And I love that. And they get to see each other's contributions in the process. So third example of today's meet is a video review. And what I have here is a snapshot of the actual today's meet stream. The red blocks are my blocking out the pseudonyms that people put in when they posted them. So this is not live. This is just a screenshot. So what I did is I did a read aloud video to demonstrate some things to students before they had to do their own very first read aloud, sophomores, future teachers, and video it and then self-critique. So I made sure it was easy to build in a lot of bloopers. I made sure to build in plenty. And then I asked them in today's meet to point out the things that I did and didn't do so well in that example, because I wanted them to get practice on understanding what the key features of doing a good read aloud video were, practice that before they did it, and also get into the reflective mode that they would need to in order to self-review and use themselves as a model. So the stream happened while they were watching the video. You can kind of see the timestamps, so all 4:38, and that's why I was while I was showing them the video. Very dangerous, because I'm saying dangerous. We were in a computer lab where students had their phones beside them. They were on, hardwired station in the computer lab, and they were presumably watching a video that I was projecting up front. So we had 3 or 4 things going on, and then I added a back channel to the mix. So it could have blown up in my face, but luckily it didn't, I don't think. What's great is I could have asked them to do the back channel afterwards as well, so it extended that way. So, so what were the enhancements that went along with those 3 examples? Trying to not focus on the tool so much when we talk about the enhancements, but we'll look at the tool itself in a second. The back channel let everyone participate. In fact, in the Wisdom Wall example, I give students points for contributing a comment to the Wisdom Wall. So if it is, I have this philosophy part. Sometimes it's for fun, sometimes it's to show what you know, sometimes it's to be helpful, sometimes it's to mentor. And sometimes it is something that I expect you to do, and I will reward you for it. So the lets can be interpreted broadly. What I love is the second bullet, the room is the expert, and we've all heard that. Who's the smartest person in the room? The room. So everyone gets the gist from everyone else. And because they're reading usually short contributions of everybody else, they're getting multiple hits. And what we know from the learning literature is the more hits on the right stuff, interleaved, mixed in with do I sound like Michelle Miller? John, it's so funny. But interleaved with other experiences, we will learn better. So I think back channels have that capacity if we are smart about the learning design. And what I love is the stuff lives on. So you can use archive versions of things for the future, or even for the next week, or as a segue to the next learning path that you're set up. So that's what I love. Who's been in today's meet? Have you all been in today's meet? No? Want to try it?
Sure.
Okay. Let's try it for a sec. So this is the bit.ly, bit.ly, it's HTTP, and /back-today. And I'm going to get out of this and go there. Now, unlike a Google Doc, I won't see that you're there. In a Google Doc, how the little animals show up, the little critters show up if you're not signed in, so it'll be the anonymous bat or whatever. But the way to talk is just and you don't have to join. You don't have to create an account. You just type in a nickname And the question you're answering is, what's one thing you find yourself repeating to students? So I would type KG, type in join, and then I'm going to type a message and I'm going to say, can you hear me now? And I'm going to click talk. Or I'm going to click say. Ugh. So is anyone else there or coming? Okay. You have 140 characters. Sounds familiar, doesn't it? Do we need help with the URL?
Oh, sorry.
So it's bit.ly/back, like for back channel, -today. Whoops, I'm in the wrong place. So, how are we doing? Is anyone?
I'm not really sure how to access your specific meeting here.
Okay, so can you see this URL here?
No, I have to find the right screen of the multiple screens here. Okay.
So it's HTTP.
Yeah, it's not really hyperlinked here. I'm not really sure how to copy and paste this.
Is there a you can. You have
What?
to type it in a separate window. I'm at todaysmeet.com. Is there a name for this window?
If you type in that bit.ly, it takes you right to that address.
Yeah. I'm trying to get it so you don't have to create an account. So
it comes up like that if you click on it. You should be able to put the little H.
And you just put in an alias or a nickname.
Good, John. The date of the final. Yeah. Okay. So there you go. It is awesome.
Oh, yes.
I actually ask this question a lot. Where is the syllabus? And see if everyone knows. Any questions? Yeah. Mm-hmm. How's this one? Whoop, spell it. Put that away, yeah. Okay. So, easy, right? It is Twitter, but private. And some instructors and some students don't want to be on Twitter, depending on what your purpose is. You may wish to be in a more public venue. You can make this more public, but you would need to take the URL. And I'm just going to say this, but you'll understand, and put it on the bathroom wall. You know what I'm saying? So you would need to put it somewhere where the public can get to it. So you can take the URL for your room and put it into your LMS, or if you want to, email it to people, or however you would normally reach out to them. There are several tools that are available that are helpful. For example, there's a projector view that lets you do this. So that would be good, John, in your large classes. Because it projects bigger, and in which case I would take a break and use it for a purpose. Okay, this group has this question, I want that group to answer it, that kind of thing. You can embed, so you can copy the embed code right into wherever your HTML editor is in your website or in your learning management system. And you'll notice that there are it's set up for a few of the popular venues, and you can export it as a PDF. And you can choose to show speaker colors, which I did, and etc. So you can also save a transcript. And I do that an awful lot because I don't always leave the room open for a long time. So it is free. There is, of course, a paid-for version, but I have an awful lot of flexibility with my free account to use it for multiple purposes. I have colleagues who teach K-12 who use this almost every day as part of their review, beginning or end of class, as a visual, and as a way to assign work to small groups. So I love it because I hope I get those kids when they graduate from high school. And so I'm showing you one of my accounts that has all of my wisdom walls in it. You can create multiple accounts, and you can decide how long you want the room to stay open. So it can stay open for a year, even for free. A month, a week, 8 hours, 1 hour, whatever. I like this because when students are reticent, I remind them it is private. This is what I'm going to do with the transcript. I'm going to use it in class, or I'm going to share it at a conference. I'm going to black out your name, whatever the case may be. And it is a no-brainer to set up. I don't mean no-brainer. The thinking should go into the pedagogy, not into the tool. And that's exactly what happens with this tool. So I think it's a wonderful venue for a lot of reasons, in that ease of use. Once we try it once, we've got it. So any thoughts about it, folks? For those of you who haven't touched it before?
It's nice that it's like a private kind of opportunity. I mean, I use Slack in a similar way.
Yep.
But this is a nice, easy, quick thing to do. If you're not going to use something all semester, or you want to use it once or twice, it seems like a good tool for that.
Mm-hmm. It is nice that it's self-contained.
Yeah, I mean, it does require you to look at it periodically, but depending on where you integrate it into your instructional path, it can fit. But that happens with every back channel, even if it's well integrated. So, so then there's Twitter. Are any of you using Twitter in your courses?
No.
Catherine, my colleague who John introduced me to, has used it to examine videos of teaching, where she assigns small groups videos and then asks students to take charge of the analysis using certain standards that she set up. She had them post after class. So they engaged in face-to-face discussion in class, and then after class, they added links connected to prior and references that she gave them, as well as things that they found out on their own. and engaged in continuing conversation. So she loves Twitter. I love Twitter for conference purposes. So one of the examples built in the slide deck is one that I used at a conference at University of Buffalo, which is nearby, and asked people to, well, there was a general hashtag that everyone followed, and then sometimes people added additional ones. So what I love is that it's easily possible to follow that hashtag whenever, and that's certainly what Catherine does with her students. So she creates a class hashtag, and then students follow it, but aren't always on it necessarily. She uses it for specific activities. And here are some additional examples. I don't know if any of you followed or have participated in Google EDU on Air. That has a global following. It's a one-day event, and the conversation in Twitter, because it is way big, reaches and involves extraordinary variety and numbers of people. So when we do it on a smaller scale, as illustrated on the right, from one of our webinars, it gives us a chance to engage in kind of parallel extensions of what we're doing. However, it is wide open unless you're doing a private direct conversation with somebody. So from an instructor's point of view, it does give you additional information about what people are getting out of things and what people are wanting to do with it. And the one thing that most people who are addicted to Backchannels will agree on is it is a way to involve people as mutual experts and contributors. Something that we often strive for in our students' learning is potentially doable if we're planful about using Backchannels. And it gives people hands-on while they're learning. That can be helpful for people that have that ability to do two things at once, or if you think about stopping, like we just did, engaging in some conversation in the back channel, and then you bring that content into the discussion, you have just done a couple of things. You've captured it for the future, and you've made sure that potentially no one is a wallflower. And that's something that we get out of our online discussion forums and our LMSs, but is sometimes difficult to capture when we have face-to-face conversations, and then there's not a note taker, or there's not a natural way to capture I'm going to call it hot air, the conversations that are going on and disappear when we leave. So the challenges are immense. This is something to not be tackled in, without, I'd say without your badge of courage on, picking the tool, figuring out a way to integrate it without it acting like or being a total add-on, and making sure that the tool works across devices well, as well as figuring out, is this going to be private or public? So there are lots and lots of challenges. Some people use things like Google Docs for a similar purpose and do it on a kind of an easy, low-end process without using a specific backchannel tool. And one tool that I have learned to love, which is going away in May, but still will exist for this semester, is TitanPad. So if you wouldn't mind or are interested in trying it, my my URL to get to it is HTTPS, and I will stop and put this into the chat. The 2 forward slashes, drkg, drkg hyphen lz dot titanpad.com/4. So let me put that into the chat. Or if you're in the slide deck, that'll also do it for you. I am constantly missing the H's today. Okay. So if you want to go there, it has a very different look and feel than Twitter or Today's Meet. And some people love it. I have used it a lot, and some organizations use it routinely. So it goes like this. Let me make it bigger. So you're encouraged when you come in to up here, type in your name or an initial, and then you'll get a color assigned to you if you set it up that way. At that point, anybody can participate either over here in the chat. So this right-hand screen is the chat window. So I might type in, what is this about? So it works just like the chat in Zoom. Or I can actually be part of building the information or the collective knowledge over here on the canvas. And this is just a very simple virtual doc. So the questions that I put in here are these. And an unnamed person is typing, yes, I use Slack. Mm-hmm. Yeah. How's that for the pregnant pause, right? So what people like about tools like TitanPad are it has a variety of export and import options, and it has this really cool thing called a time slider. So it's a visual about where things have changed. So it's like Google's revision history, but it's a lot more visual. And it can actually play the revisions. I have found that students who get lost in a Google Doc do better over here in TitanPad. Partly it's setting the colors up, partly it's this time slider, but when they goof up, they feel as if they have a little more control. There are also ways to link to the current version, to the read-only page, etc. So it has some nice features and it's been quite stable over the years. I have not figured, well, I'm sure that money has to do with their leaving the scene at the end of May. An earlier version of this also disappeared, so I wouldn't be surprised if someone is buying them and we'll see it reappear in another version. But the reason that I bring TitanPad into the mix is if you are using any kind of synchronous publication venues like Google Docs, that alone, like TitanPad, can be your back channel if you set it up that way and use it that way. So what you choose doesn't have to be a prescribed back channel tool. It can be, but it's how you use it that would make a difference, or make a difference. Yeah. So what gets complicated for some people is that there is both the chat and the chat area, as well as the canvas, if you will, or the doc. But I've seen it work with hundreds of people in it, and what often happens is people just need a reminder about the conventions. As with any tool, if you're going to use it in an instructional venue, you're going to want to remind people, okay, please make sure you put just your first name, and please don't type where somebody else is typing, and please, be kind, and etc. And if you goof up, please do this. So those same kinds of conventions are going to be necessary across whatever backchannel tool you pick. So I have always loved TitanPad because it actually, with the fewer bells and whistles, is kind of almost an easier learning curve for students, even though there's the two-part view. So this is a comparison of sessions with and without. This is like trying to take what we've just talked about and put it into some visuals. So regardless of how you're running your class, even if it's a cooperative learning based model, traditional presentation type model, it would parallel the left-hand side where you are juggling people's contributions based on what you are doing. Using backchannels, as illustrated on the right, allows or captures, not even just allows, but captures the connections that are happening among people as in the room, as well as potentially, depending on what you do and what you want to do with it, incorporating audiences and participation outside of that room. So something to think about as we step into things. Has anyone used Padlet? So Padlet used to be called Wallwisher. And Padlet has a very different look and feel. It's a wall or a bulletin board, if you think about it. And it offers a very different look and feel, but it also gives you an opportunity for students to do the very same thing. So I am not going to get it, am I? What I did is I downloaded a PDF of one of my Padlets and redacted students' names so I could show you. And I'm going to stop sharing and see if that helps. Here we go. Sometimes what happens is, because you're in a different app, it'll want to find that. So remember that example where I was talking with you about students critiquing me in that read aloud video? This is a different section doing the same thing, only using Padlet. So I chose a blueprint kind of grid in the back for the wall and asked students to answer this question. So based on stuff that we talked about in class, on your own, please tell me what an educator needs to know and do to do a great read aloud. So what they did is post what they thought, and then I downloaded it and redacted their names, so that you could take a look at it without their identifiers. Could they do this in a discussion board? Yes. Could they do it in today's Meet? Not so much because of the character limits. Could they do it in Twitter? Yes, if they kept to the 140 characters. So could they do it in TitanPad or in a Google Doc? Yes, they could. What's really cool about Padlet is that you can embed other things easily. So they could add a link, they can add a video, they can add an image. They didn't here, but they could have. So, wow, can see what I'm shopping for, right? I did buy those boots. So I use it for different purposes that are not back channel-ish, but I also use it for back channel purposes. And this is something that I ask students to do while, how about that? There's nothing here, nothing to see, nobody contributed. Oh, that was extra credit. That's one. How about that? So when students are involved in taking a look at some kind of archive media or some kind of like a YouTube video or reviewing a website or something like that, I will often ask them to capture what I call infomercials, and I use Padlet. So while they're doing it, I will ask them to introduce us to whoever it is. In this case, they were looking at some archive interviews of teacher entrepreneurs. So they went above and beyond introducing us to the person, and then they embedded videos and links. So this is something that I had them do the actual screening of stuff in small groups in class. And then after that, ask them to think about something that would be helpful for people who weren't part of that conversation. So this was tacking on, extending the conversation. That's the model that we were using here. So this, although this looks very, very busy, this is something that helped them get introduced to things that the other groups were doing without necessarily being part of it. Here's the trick. I tacked that on to the learning experience in class. If all I did was ask them to post and then do nothing with it, just drop in and visit, I would be basically talking to myself. So it was important that I design a subsequent learning activity that would draw them back here and have them use this stuff beyond that first hit or that second hit. So that's the pedagogy. It's not the tool. It's not, it's simply how you set up your learning path. So I like to use Padlet for front end and back end work because it's such a wonderful go-to for more information and more reflection and more connections. So it's something that some people use as a publishing venue, other people use in many ways, but it's a great back channel tool as well. So what I wanted to do, I will stop doing examples. There's a few more in here that you may want to click to. A couple professional development ones, etc. There's a couple of tips that I've hit on, and I want to just reiterate before we end. I think I've hit on a lot of the challenges already. The temptation with any tool is to add it on, not integrate it. We are excellent in our trade, both our content areas and our teaching. So we need to think of how back channels can help us increase the instructional hits and not just be an add-on. So it takes a lot of pre-planning and figuring out the conventions or the etiquette associated with it. Nothing new, something that we all do all the time. We need to decide if it's worth it. My recommendation is if your LMS has a built-in chat tool, you use that first. Don't go elsewhere because it's a little learning curve for you and the potential for add-on and definitely for students. We've already talked about thinking backwards, identifying what you want to get out of it. And one thing that happens in Backchannels that I didn't really hit on is this. Middle school behavior comes out really easily and quickly in Backchannels. So if you want to use this with your students, you may want to start with a low valence activity to work out both the conventions as well as just the kinks that may happen. I have found that the private venue is the way to go with most of my courses. I think it's sufficiently public for most students to realize that they are being part of the mix without going really big. And as I mentioned, you really do want a helper if you can, especially initially. Those backchannel breaks are really good ways to take a breath and involve other people and review and emphasize things. So that's something, though, that you need to plan for. Set a timer or have a student be a timer for you. And as I mentioned, making sure that you build in both the conventions and the etiquette. So and when I get out of this, I'll make sure that I put the resource doc into the chat window. But it has everything from tools to some articles and such. So are there questions that you all have? Let me get out of this. Besides, John, how many more things can go wrong on the 13th when it's a Friday, right?
Well, this has gone well.
Don't say it aloud, right? I mentioned this in the last chat, the last group that was in. Cool Cat Teacher Blog, if you don't follow it, it's K-12, but there's so much in it that is about good teaching and learning. And one thing that she says is innovate like a turtle. So I am very selective about when I use backchannel tools. Very, very selective. And do it in really small doses. That's why the today's meet is if I'm not going to use a Google Doc or Padlet, and I use them for somewhat different reasons, I will go to today's meet because of the privacy and because of the 140 characters. That gives me a chance to be more self-contained and give students a taste of it before I jump into something a little more in depth. So today's meet is usually my choice, but I still need to be really thoughtful about when, where, and how I'm asking students to contribute. It is so important, though, with everything that we're asking students to do, to figure out a way to make it meaningful for them. So, like the Wisdom Wall has some built-in meaning. They read, and I forgot to mention this to you, the Wisdom Wall, as part of their introduction to the course, they are linked to Wisdom Walls from prior groups. So they get it at the front end, and they're contributing to that knowledge base at the back end. So the ways that you figure out to weave things in are going to be really, really important, even if it's, what is the exam question that you think I should be asking, whatever. So ways to hook them into being meaningful participants. So I want to thank you all this is the last session of the day.
Well, thank you.
So thank you for being here.
Thank you.
And have a wonderful weekend. I wish you good weather.
And you too.
We need it. Thanks a lot, everybody.